This
And
conference will now be recorded.
thank you, Michael. So welcome. Yesterday, I believe that most of you were involved in the working session at whatever time period we decided to go ahead and do it. Sure it was a long time for Rob and Robert, and I apologize I had to leave during the second time period. But Rob, if you wouldn't mind, or Roberta, if you wouldn't mind sort of outlining and summarizing what was achieved during that and any of the action items that we need to address and what sort of was the status.
Yeah. You want me to start, Roberto, and then
Yeah, go ahead, Rob. You did a great job after we have hang up the call. So, I mean, you must have spent a number of hours there. I think
I
it was.
had well, I had momentum. It was one of those things, right? There's a
We're in
lot
the
of
flow.
inertia. There was
Go with the
I have
flow. Yeah, I love it.
yeah, I got inertia with starting, and then I had momentum though once I get going. Anyways, yeah, so we did go through the rest of the document, and one of the big things that came up was that Roberto suggested taking the images and the drawings and stuff and putting them in an appendix, and so we discussed it, and I think most everybody thought that was a good idea to give it a shot and see how it looks. Alan had brought up a topic. He had looked at other OCP specifications and noticed that there were drawings embedded within the text. So it's easy to edit. So we decided to go give it a shot, and that's what I did after the meeting, so we can review that. There's still after the call also I tried to clean up and standardize both documents a bit from the headings and where stuff is, and I did move all the stuff to the end so we can take a look. And another thing that at least came to my mind as we were doing the module specification, and we had the one thing like we had talked about it a little bit before you left, Brevin, was the cabling pathways, right? It sticks out in a weird way, and I just noticed that we the first part we might be missing some stuff, or it's not organized maybe perfectly, and so I wanted to maybe talk about that in this session on if cabling pathways is kind of in a weird spot, what else are we missing? Should it be categorized elsewhere? And then I think the last part, there's a bunch of sections at the end which we currently don't have much content yet, which is like the delivery, the installation, and then the operation. And we briefly talked about, do we combine that into deployment and operation, and then have subcategories, or leave it as is? And I think we decided leave it as is, see how the content fills out, and if it's not enough content, we could always roll it into one category so it is needed. What did I miss, Roberto?
Nothing as I remember it. I mean, we had some discussions if we should just generalize I mean, we went into the cable pathway and see. I mean, if we should have some general description, like it's infrastructure above the racks on cable trays or baskets and so on. But just to mention the simplicity and also I mean, in the spirit of OCP, which should be easy to connect, easy to maintain, and I mean, we shouldn't be that specific, but I don't know if we agree upon how if should have some general comments there
Nah. Yeah, not yet. But
no.
yeah, I agree with your
Remember,
comments.
we went into that discussion shortly, and
Yeah.
no. And I look to your work. It looks really much cleaner, much more correct. Looks nice, if you ask me. But I have lived with it for a couple of months now, so maybe we should ask some of the other guys
Right.
for the first time.
Yeah, but so yeah, I agree. I took the numbers off the headings, which kind of cleaned it up, moved it to the left a little bit. shrunk up the text of the. Yeah, I right now I do like the images at the end, but we'll let people comment. But as we're talking about the cable and pathways, and I'm thinking about specifications within, we have a lot of the specifications of the physicality of the module, right? The strength, the IP rating, the paint coating, the floor loading, and all that stuff. But I'm like, do we even have, the aisle width should be this wide? Like inside kind of the IT space, you should be able to roll this size rack into it. I'm wondering if, because when I thought of the cabling pathways, I'm like, well, are we missing a few other comments that we might need inside the
I
white
suspect.
space? And maybe we categorize those together.
I think this is one important information. I mean, at your 1200 between, so you can move racks in and out and also perform maintenance. You have enough space behind in the double row with 650 millimeters. And some comments should be in there, say, good enough for the purpose we have. If we, I mean, we have some discussions with the communication racks that you need to connect from the rear side. Wasn't that so? Brevin, help us out here. Because, I mean, as long as you work with the server racks for cubby servers, there's no need for access behind. Am I right? Because that discussion was up and we asked one of the hyperscalers and one of the coolers, and they, sent an email saying this is sufficient if you work with communication racks in the end of the rack rows.
Yeah,
there's
a minimal access required,
Yeah,
and that can be justified given the frequency and time necessary. So from a life safety perspective, that
yes.
can be justified.
Yeah. I mean, in one section that we are presenting the dimensions for space, the white space areas, maybe we should have some comments regarding that, because this is a new design as I see it on the market.
Right, and that would be I think some of the usefulness of this document, right? People reading it, it's like, well, why, an explanation of this, we have a drawing, here's what it's like, but we don't have like the actual spec, the row should be this because of this, and, I agree.
And the OCP makes it possible and it's sufficient regarding this and this with some comments, so it makes sense. This is actually one of the, developments regarding floor plan design that we can use the area better when we are using OCP hardware in open racks.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to, I guess, review any outstanding items? What are the next steps?
Why don't we, if it's okay, if we want to show both documents, and we can just kind of run through and let people, actively ask for feedback.
Yeah. Would be a good thing.
Okay, Rob, I've made you an organizer, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
All right, so you want me to present, don't you?
Yes, please.
All right.
What does SC in the brackets
Oh, I did that. That's my company, Schneider Electric. So
I thought you
I
were
like Michael does invent. It's helpful sometimes on these associations. So
Actually, it is short description of Sweden, so you're more than welcome.
that's true. All right. Okay, let's see if I can size these correctly. How's this looking? All right.
Looks good.
Yeah, so we'll go down, just cleaned up a little bit there. We got to do that. Okay, so the table of contents.
Hey, Rob, this is Scott. I just wanted to let you know I joined.
Oh, excellent. Good. Thanks, Scott. So this hasn't changed much. There was a few little typos where I changed things from design to specification and to standardize them both, but this is nothing really new here. And again, the thought of let me pull this a little bit more. There we go. That maybe the transportation site prep, on-site module deployment, operations, and maintenance. I think we can make the decision. Do those four require their own big thing, or do we call it deploy and operate, and then do sub one? So we can decide. Okay, so overview, very similar. And here's the module specification summary. I think we're both on one page, which is nice. We didn't really do anything more here, I think, Brevin, from after you left.
Okay.
Correct
So
the
we have
numbers.
some action.
Yeah.
We do have some outstanding items on that, where we need to look at the weights, and Schneider needs to look at the internal dimensions, and the PD
Yeah.
example in the Dubai.
Right.
I updated my when regarding the weight, so my numbers are correct in the weight column now. It's okay. I removed the racks from the empty weight, and now it's without racks and equipment.
Oh, good. Okay. So that's with
Very
no
good.
racks or anything. Yep.
And
so yes.
your assumption is full with how many number of racks at what kilogram?
30
racks at how many kilograms? 1,500?
Yes, the maximum, the high-end weight we used per rack, fully equipped, I think. Yeah. I think I received a number from Mark, actually, put him in the, he had some calculations when it comes to the audit protocol or the scorecard.
Okay.
You can find some good things there.
Good. All right. All right. So good stuff. We'll move on here.
On your Schneider one there, is the power really 400 amps going into the 90 kilowatt MDC?
So yeah, that is the specs. Well, luckily we got the product manager Scott on. Yeah,
that's correct.
That's 480 kilowatts. I mean, that's a bunch of power to feed 90 kilowatts.
Well,
275 kilowatts actually you can provide. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple issues. One, the module that we have spec'd out is a standard old DX. So if you were to worry about the peak, current draw, I think, and with battery charging and junk like that.
All right.
So the 90 kilowatts that you're calling it is kind of a steady state thing.
It's just the IT load. It's the IT load that's
okay.
available for the customer. So it's actually it's 100 kilowatt UPS. It's a bigger panel to cover the DX units. You got house loads, everything else. So could you go down to potentially a 300 or something like that? Possibly, but we have a standard panel size that fits a range of different solutions.
Okay, that makes sense. But then the other question is if you need 4 or 5 times as much power coming into the MDC as you've got for an IT load, then is 500 amps for the 300 kilowatt one enough for the Swedish modules one?
Yeah, I mean, you have a capacity of 345 kilowatts fully load if you go to the amps, and I think we are calculating with chilled water units.
Oh, okay.
So we have extremely low need
Close.
for the cooling side with extremely low for compressors comparing to the DX. You have taking care of the compressor starting up and so on and peaking. I will imagine that that's the way you have calculated with the DX solution, Rob. In a situation,
That's correct.
I mean, extraordinary situation with everything starting up with loading charging the batteries and the compressors starting
Right.
up.
Yeah. Yep.
So is that going to be explained someplace in here, or other people going to get?
That is a great, Brevin, if you could write that down. Yes, we do have the electrical section, which is not really filled out yet, and so that's where it would go. So that's,
Okay.
that's great point. Okay, so this is one thing. Again, Scott, I'll circle back with you on some of the information we need, like internal. We have internal area. I know we have internal area of the white space. I think I don't know if we have total internal dimensions, but if we can estimate that. This is all so from a just this is silly formatting stuff. I figure the exact if people make a spec for a different kind of module, I didn't put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just made it bullets because it might be many or less. That was just a thought. Whether you have, all of those exact items matching or not, but the main headers like walls and floors and external protection are similar.
Yeah.
Can I ask just a question? I'm just curious as far as the intent of what you're trying to do. Is this just to be a base specification? And when you get into the specifics of the construction of the steel, how things are done, and that starts to get very vendor specific. So are we trying to be specific with different vendors, or trying to be very agnostic in terms of the broader market?
Yeah, go ahead.
This
Yeah,
is the specification.
Yeah.
So it's a broad specification that then both of the involved parties are going to proceed to develop a product specification that meets the MDC specification, and that will include all of those vendor-specific details.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is, like, for example, we talk about here in this case, we have our surface treatment, or in the Swedish modular C profile specifically in terms of that type of construction. I'm just wondering if we might want to get more descriptive or less prescriptive in terms of the actual construction and more of what the intent of that construction is meant to support. So, a structural steel frame that's designed for lifting so much load, insulation that meets such requirements. That kind of like that we have more down the bottom here, as opposed to the actual construction of each individual modules, because this starts to get into now you're specifying Schneider or you're specifying Swedish modules, and I'm guessing that's not necessarily your intent.
Yeah.
Right.
So the opposite way, like we may actually be more detailed than necessary in this particular specification.
Yeah. So I'm, Brevin, so I'm with, so, here's how it happened, Scott, right? I took the Schneider spec, right, and kind of copied it over with the intent of kind of genericizing it to a point that a vendor could go, yeah, I can make that, because, Rob C, if you look, if you were to make a 90 kW module, that met the rough, do you make it exactly like this? And if you don't, then we should, maybe take out this tubular steel welded part, because maybe you do it a different way.
Right. Well, and that's,
Yeah.
I think Scott brought up a great point, and the approach, and that's what I was trying to understand too. Is I'm a little late to the conversation here, but I highlighted the base skid and anchor points and things like that because our approach is slightly different. It meets the same intent, and it meets the the product you're intending to specify, but our product specification would be different than this.
Yep. Well, good, and that's all that. Yeah. So I do want to genericize it to that point.
I'm with you, Rob. Just clean it up. I mean, sure, you are right there. We could use the general parts as a steel frame as constructed for supporting this load, and also I mean
structural steels. Yeah.
Structural steel, yeah. Maybe we could skip. I mean, C profiles is not necessary. If we could have as an information if because it's a bit generic. It's no dimensions there. You can skip the bullet with the dimensions if you like to. More than, I mean, it's C profile constructed for picking up this load, and maybe we could have it. We can work with this section maybe, Rob, and try to generalize it.
Yeah. So
Would be a good thing to do and then I mean we this is, I mean, information that we should include when submitting for a product, I presume.
right. Yeah. So this is the generic one, and then if both Schneider makes a 90 kW and PCX, and then Swedish Modules makes one, then your response they all might be a little bit different, but they meet the spec.
That's right.
Okay, so yeah, so Brevin, I think that's going to be an action both for all of us to individually go through and de-specify. Yeah, like this is a color, right, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a specific color that we create, right? So
right. So I got to get rid of that, right?
Right. So if we want to say, well, obviously it doesn't have to be white or that specific white, but we may want to specify that the surface treatment or the quality of the finish is probably what we're trying to get to, right? We want to show that there's a pre-treatment primer, a surface treatment that's designed to meet marine environments or something to that effect, right? So that way, at least we're saying that it needs to meet these minimum requirements to be acceptable in an outdoor environment.
Sure.
Great.
So yeah, I can help with that. I don't mean to throw a wrench in the works. I'm just looking at this thing, and this is very specific to what we do.
Yeah. To the contrary, good. I think your comments were helpful.
Yeah. Very much. Good. Hey, and I would have done it earlier, but Brevin told me not to, so I'm blaming it on Brevin. So
let Brevin have it.
Well, and I haven't been available very much for a previous conversation, so I apologize.
Yeah. No, it's perfect timing. Because we find, we had a lot of work to do before we kind of we will be getting more and more into the nuts and bolts here. I took out we had like crazy detail on the external doors, which I did take out a fair amount of that, and I think we could still do it more. But anyways, all right. So there we'll get through that. So let me just go back and look at the categories, right? We have dimensions of the module. We have construction of the module, right? We get into the frame and finish and all that other stuff. But I'm wondering, should we have 1, 2, and then 3? Maybe we have a interior layout or a I don't know what the title would be, and that's where we can get into some cabling pathways, aisleway widths, and descriptions on things like that.
Yeah, a general design or general layout, right? Or
what do you guys think? Yeah, what would be a good name? Here, we'll do it now.
Yeah.
Trying to think of what that would be labeled as.
Interior.
How about interior pathways or interior layout and pathways?
Or interior specification, interior.
Layout would be sufficient, yeah.
Yeah, that might be okay.
I'll just leave it at that. Interior layout for now.
Yeah.
We do have a section of the data center facility, which is IT space, IT layout, and space planning. So do we want to bring that in?
This is almost so for the all-in-one. It's because we divide it into two spaces, right? We have the IT space with the racks are, but we also have that little, area with a panel board and fire suppression and all that stuff. So IT space as a description might be a little bit too much.
Nope, I think you're right. Interior layout, good.
And then maybe we could break it into IT space, and if we want, and
I can call it in like facility space or electrical room, or I'm trying to think of other terminology.
We could always change it. So. And this might be, for you, right, NA, because essentially, right, for Swedish modules.
Space. Yeah, but what will you include in facility space?
So
we would say,
be the main input panels,
main input,
ATS. It could be ATS fire panels.
Mounted, accessible with, front access, stuff like that.
I'm trying to think of all the panels that go into an area. Get the main panel. Yeah. You've got there's other control sections. So potentially you may have a control panel of some sort. Maybe a small panel for the monitoring equipment. So it could be, there's usually about, I find anywhere between 3 to 5 panels that kind of just show up, right? If all the different various things
you got lights and exit lights, and then you have your main panel. So a bunch of stuff starts getting added in there.
Yeah, in the U.S., you're typically going to have a separate one for your house loads. So.
Okay. And also, I mean, you have the security access control system and stuff like that. Okay. All right.
Okay, so 2D, interior layout to be developed further, of course, from an organization perspective, but this is good.
I mean, should we put in the measurements in a cold aisle and the hot aisles and some? Is this the right section for that? Should be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
I think so. Right.
Yep. More work, yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll just copy this. Just put this stuff over
Mm-hmm.
here. And I'll just do this stuff too, just for reference. Not that it really applies to the 300. It's a little bit different. You'll have some, but yours might be more at the, at the end of the module, at the end of the row, right? You'd have some of that versus a separate space.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. I feel better. I feel better now. I just felt like there's this hole in information. Okay. All right. So this not much work from a at least from a content perspective, but at least organizationally we have this stuff here.
Well, I think to those other comments is just how much detail do we need in this high-level specification? We need to establish the minimums and the potential design that can be used. But how far would we go beyond this in particular?
Yeah.
Let's consider that. Now, looking at the expectation of multiple companies building it to a specification and then their product specifications. Now, a lot of it, though, we do want to include the items maybe for reference, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is a base specification that supports OCP racks and hardware. And if we focus on meeting that goal or vision for this document, that's where our focus should be.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about, so for example, on the, the electrical design, right? I mean, we have a specification. I mean, this is, this doesn't tell you. Let's take this as an example, right? This specification has a, a generic electrical layout. And if you go from the OCP racks up, let's see, we said, hey, we're going to be able to do 12 racks or, maybe 13. And here it says we're going to do 232 amp 3-phase to each one. That supports OCP nicely. And again, you could do busway, you could do UPS or without UPS, and that definitely supports. We do specify the panel size, they're the main bus size, and we do specify here the size of the generators for this, because we know this is work, but we I don't know, do we remove some of that detail? Do we, we don't say how the ATS is programmed.
I think it's that's not too bad. And then this particular design is with the 2 gen sets on this, is that, I don't know if you guys discussed that was something we did specifically for the uptime tier 2 requirements, but a lot of customers at that smaller solution wouldn't be using 2 gen sets, for example.
Right.
So you might want to put something like optional.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Tier 2.
Yes.
You still need to remove those extra lines that are between your generators and the main bus.
Right.
Oh, those are bothering you, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, because they're not going straight in, right?
These little lines right here?
Yep.
Oh, the other ones.
No. The lines from the generator, the ATS stays. The one from the generator, the main bus goes.
Oh yeah, that one right there, that little bit right there.
Yep.
But I mean, the G could stand for grid as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think I don't know why it. I don't know where I saw that drawing or something, but for some reason I think we because I think we just use breakers to do ATS function, right? Is that how we do this, Scott? That you could theoretically bypass around the ATS, or?
Well, we have I don't know. I know this diagram probably came from us, right? So now it makes me wonder if as we're talking, I'm going back and looking like, wait a minute, do we have that problem on our?
I redrew it. And I could have redrawn this, Ron, but I don't.
Yeah. I'm
up
pulling up the reference design summary just to see what's in there.
Yeah. All right.
But it should just be straight into the ATS, and that could be an ATS controller. Again, the definition of what the actual ATS varies a bit depending on the size of the solution, but.
Yep. All right, I'll fix it. I don't want you to twitch anymore, so I'll fix that up for you.
Thank you.
I suppose I have the same mistake on mine.
Yeah, well, yeah, you might, because you think you copied some of the stuff. But,
you got that from the reference design document, so I got to take that up with the Science Center why they have that shown that way. Yeah. Because the one line definitely doesn't. The one line's not shown that way. So
okay. I'll fix that. Yeah, and again, this drawing is just to give people an idea of the spec, But Scott, from at least our perspective, I like the idea of having the optional secondary, and this is stuff that all needs to be explained in the electrical. And if somebody also decides to, hey, I'm going to use a chilled water system or as an optional, then they could theoretically start undersizing, the input. So
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know what we accomplished there. What's the action out of that? Outside of we on our end, we got to go back and check the drawing. But I don't know. So Brevin, maybe both Roberto and we'll take a stab of doing our best at making a generic electrical system specification, and then we can bring it back to the team and see if they think it's generic enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And all right, yep. Very good.
All right.
On transportation and installation, would the customer ever care about the center of gravity of this thing?
So we do, I think we have, I have to go back, we've got some site preparation and I want to say manuals. Manual will be a strong term, but at least some documentation to address those. And it is written, it's probably written a bit more generically in terms of, be sure to account for this, be concerned about that. So it's more of a warnings document that if lifting. So yeah, I don't know if it fits in this specification at all, but that's one of the things that we have a document that kind of warns of, hey, you need to take care when lifting because of center of gravity issues and that sort of thing. So I don't know if is something you want to include or.
I think the idea of the spec is to include some of those things. Yeah, so that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm gonna dig
The
that out.
question is,
Go ahead.
I mean, could you scroll down my document and see what we have put in there? I mean, if it's sufficient, then you have something maybe even more generic, can use it. So yeah, foundation, what have it? Okay.
the question is how would a customer, an OCP end user, utilize this specification in order to build out their RFP and look at their budgeting and requirements for their site? And so anything to help support that would be good to include as well.
Yeah.
Good point.
Because if the center of gravity is way off, then when they're trying to decide what they're going to use for a mobile crane, it would be important to know.
Yeah, I agree. I would think that maybe we don't necessarily need to prescribe what center of gravity is, just the fact that the specification requires that it becomes specified, just so that when you're budgeting crane, et cetera, that the end user has the appropriate information to create a budget or purchase something.
Yeah.
And that's always depends on the site conditions, because sometimes you have to lift it over a building or something like that, and of course you need a much bigger crane for the purpose. And so, how generic can we be, you think, Rob, in this information here on site preparations?
Yeah, just like you said, it's more like considerations. You must understand the center of gravity of the module being moved.
Yeah.
Also, obstacles that must be lifted over. When selecting a crane, consider these things.
I'm trying to see if we as you guys talk, I'm just looking for a document to see if I can pull something up to see what we've done in the past. I don't recall off the top of my head what our latest and greatest is.
So is the intent that this is a document that you would use to compare a number of different possible MDC solutions, and then when you actually pick one, you would get more detailed information from the vendor?
Yeah.
I
mean, the most common way is when you are doing the pre-engineering, you are doing the investigations of the site, and also I mean, in the cost when you're creating your budgets for this kind of deployment, I mean, you need to take in consideration the conditions, and there's where these questions pop up and need to be taken care of. So if you have some information just to alert that the customer aiming to deploy those kind of solutions need to be aware of this thing we mentioned right now, it should be good if it was in there. Maybe you have some good stuff, Scott, in already prepared. I mean, when it comes to a delivery, we also have, I mean, site drawings and specs for the customers to use when they preparing the ground. But to be generic here, maybe just be aware of those things. Just not
Yeah, that's what I
forget.
was trying. I was trying to find a document because we had, obviously you can't do something so specific to and you do a general design.
Yeah.
The site, the site prep document almost has to be just as generic, and so that's why I was trying to find the one that I know we have one somewhere. I'm just trying to find it because it might be helpful if it's generic enough to be used here. So I'll keep looking.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah. All right. So if we're cool on the the layout here, and we'll go to the appendix here because I think the Roberto's has a bit more of the drawing side. So you have your external views, rough IT space layout.
Yeah.
3 modules, the electrical stuff. More electrical stuff than cooling right here. And I think, yeah, that's it. And again, if there's more things we want to put in the appendix, of course we can. But so if we're cool with the format and layout, I think it's up to Roberto and us to start, genericizing, filling in more information, and then coming back for further review.
Okay. We have a modular data center meeting next week on the 12th. And we have one more nearing the end of the year, but that really starts to encroach on the holiday time period. There's one the day after Christmas Day, so likely we'll probably cancel that one. But then we get back in there. There's another one the week of January New Year's as well. So that'll be the day after New Year's. Now I assume everybody's going to be back in the office, so that would probably be one we want to hold. And,
Yeah,
and
I think
sure that we continue that.
Yeah.
Then we have another one. Now, what I do want to reference is the incubation committees, committee meetings. So December's is moved out until January. So we have one on January 10th and one on February 7th. Now, this is all in leading up to the global summit, and so we need your teams to push really hard here in the next couple weeks to go ahead and get that done, get this to an approved state within the project, so that we can present it out to the incubation committee on 10th or the 7th. So that it is ready to go for the summit.
Yeah.
Now I know we had some additional, I should say some fairly aggressive, in hindsight, aggressive plans to develop a specification format first, a generic specification for the product or for the modular data center, and then also product specifications stemming off of those. Now, I think that goes back to companies, the specific company Schneider and Swedish Modules, on the time period that it takes you to then develop and publish a product specification that meets the needs. We have to assume that it's fairly easy because those exist, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like we're going to be able to achieve that given our current progress.
Yeah, the incub. I mean, if we get this standard locked down, it might be possible because we basically fill in the details and maybe add specific products and things like that. I know the incubation committee does like to see the the products be submitted at the same time of the specification, but considering that I think they have they know that these products sort of exist already, that if there's a delay that they'd probably be okay with that. The thing the foundation wants to avoid is like a pie in the sky. I'd love to have this, but nobody makes it.
Yeah.
And there's not really that risk here, so I think they'd be okay with it.
So let's drive for completing this in the next couple of weeks leading up to the holidays. Get the general specification done.
Yeah.
If we need to have another working session to go through it again, we can, but we have a few. We'll look at that for to have it done before the holidays, to look for presenting it on January 10th. And then you have another 3 weeks after that, if we can get those product specifications ready for that February meeting. Agendas do fill up. We have a lot of progress on a lot of different scopes within the OCP Foundation. And so we'll want to get that in earlier rather than later to make sure we have a spot. But I think this working session was actually really successful. Sort of in hindsight as well, wish we would have done it a little bit earlier. Had a really long working session to really get this alignment, but better late than never. So made some really good progress. But I will say that if we're going to achieve these dates and these timelines to get it out, need to go ahead and apply some time and fill in those missing areas.
Great. And sounds good, Brevin. And one last note on that, as I look at these two things, what's up on the screen now, that I think we both go at this, genericize it, do our best on these things, and we will probably have to come together and say, they should be able to look pretty similar.
Yeah.
If we at least agree on the base specs. And so, we might be able to pick and choose the best way of describing it from both and then make them very similar. So we might need another working session to do that, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, but that's a little bit of our homework now, Rob, isn't it? Just to give it a first touch and then have a working session and finalize it. You think, should we prepare and do some pre-work here and just touch base and see if they look alike, and then have a working session? Should we schedule in a one more before the holidays? Is that what you're saying?
I was just I don't know if I want to schedule it right now, but we might need to. So our next, we're meeting next week, Brevin? Is that right? On this, do we have it every week or every other?
It's every week except for the data center facility, which is the 19th. So the 12th is modular data center.
Okay, so let's see where we are next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
You have giving in your notes there, Brevin. You put in the action points for us there, or should we just pick? Yeah, okay, good.
I will outline them for us.
Yeah, right.
Just we have a couple more minutes. Do you mind? I actually found the document that I was looking for. I don't know if you want to take a quick look at that. It is an interesting thing in terms of this might be more helpful in terms of generically explaining to a customer, these are the things that you need to consider for the site.
Cool.
Yep.
Is that well? How about this, Scott? Let's chat after this. But if you think some of it's good, why don't we could throw it into this document at the end and
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
review it next week.
Okay, that'll work.
Awesome.
Okay, you put it on the Google Drive, or what do you mean? Yeah.
Well, I just say, Scott, we could put it in our 90 kW one in here, and you guys, Roberto, you could take a look at it whenever you want.
Right.
See?
Yeah, would be nice.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I got.
Rob, is it more helpful to me if on part of your objective now is to genericize, especially this construction area? Is comments, how I've put them in here, the most helpful, or would you like me and my team to go through and maybe come up with a genericized version and then send that to you?
Ooh, okay. I didn't see all these.
I met with our engineering team, and then I just put my notes in here this morning.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah. Have you put them in mine as well, Rob?
No, we only looked at the 90 kW.
All right.
I know Rob had added some additional comments to, I believe, the version 1 of the Swedish modules. But yeah, we need to share these across or make them available between the two. Thanks, Rob, for your input on those.
Yeah, if you want to write it, if you were to take this outline and write up how you do it, just blast it to both Roberto and I. That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
For our perspective is we need to better understand the dimensional requirements. You're talking about back access of rack and the dimensional standards. For one, there's a typo in the conversion where it's 137,000 millimeters makes this, but aside from that, if we're meeting all the code requirements of what we'd be up against deploying this in the United States and, things like that, that's what we're to better understand.
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, this module that we have specified, and we don't put it anywhere, is for IEC countries.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was wondering if you get into the specifications of the electrical system and things like that starts to get, you've got two different versions.
Yeah. So this one is IEC, and I think we should just leave it like that. If we and we could make a version that's optimized for the U.S. But,
okay, that I didn't understand, but that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll adjust accordingly, and then I will send, what I'll do is I'll create a genericized version of some of the construction methods, and I can send that to both you and Roberto.
Awesome. Yeah. Great.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I appreciate everybody's input here. I think our actions are to get some very good progress in the working session. Great input from Scott, Rob, Coyle, and some of the other. We have too many ROBs running around in this particular sub-project. So I appreciate all your input. Like I said, I think we need to go ahead and push this out. So let's work towards that. Let's really get it finalized. Let's get it pushed out. Let's get it to the IC committee January 10th, and let's get a contribution from the data center facility group.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You guys have a good rest of your day. We'll shut this down.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.